Hey everyone, welcome back. Let's go ahead and get started on our actual project. We went through and we got the assets from the different sites. So if you haven't done so, open Construct 2. Adjust my microphone. There we go, there we go. Click No Thanks. If you haven't made the project yet, go ahead and make a new project. You might have done it from the last tutorial. New empty HD Landscape 720p project. You can select any of them, but I prefer the HD layouts. And again, click in, hold down Control, use your mouse wheel to scroll out. Alright, let me explain this part. A brief overview is you have properties on your left, your project and your layers on your right, your objects are also on your right at the bottom. To start out, the white part is called a layout. The dotted line is the playable window. Now, outside of the dotted line, which is 3/4 of this rectangle, is the areas we can scroll to. So the window you're going to be playing your game is within the dotted line, this part. But if you want to make a level, you can scroll to an object and scroll this direction or down or diagonal, and you can view the rest of the layout via a scroll. That's how that works. For now, we're not going to do any scrolling. So let's resize the layout to 1280, 720. There you go, and the margins just leave the same. Alright, you see the change. You can zoom in to make it a little bigger if you want. Next thing we're going to go to do is Project Properties and hit View. And Full Screen and Browser, we want to change that to Off. And this is why. If you were to launch this full screen in the browser with the letterbox scale, which is default, I believe, this is what's going to happen. It's going to stretch. And we don't want that. I don't want that. I think it's ugly. So we're going to change this to Off. And notice the change. Now it's in a window with a border. I like that better because then the resolution and the aspect ratio are roughly the same if you're programming for both HTML5 PC, a website game, or an app for a phone or a tablet. That's why I like to keep them linear and universal. Anyway, let's go back to Construct 2. Like I said before, we're going to make this an RPG. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing we are going to do, where'd my dotted line? Oh, where'd my dotted line go? Wow, I'm losing it. Anyway, let's go past that. Forget that ever happened. Let's go ahead and name the project. We're going to name this Sugar Hill Island Trip. We're taking a trip to Sugar Hill Island. Version 1, description, ID. Don't really bother. This isn't really that important right now until you actually export and other people play it. First layout, it's going to be the layout that loads upon launch. We're just going to leave it as default. Window size is set, pixel, and don't worry about most of this stuff. We'll get that at another point. If you ever want to change your layout, you can, or your orientation, you can do that. Everything else, leave alone. But what we are going to do is we're going to make our first layer. Now, how layers work is, think of shooting an arrow. And there's a target in the front that's blue. There's a target behind the blue that's green. And there's a target behind the green target that is red. And you shoot the arrow, it's going to hit the blue target, then the green target, and then the red target. And that's kind of how layers work. The layer which is on top is going to be the first target. The second layer, which is going to be below it, that's the order of visibility. So the top layer is the first target. The second layer below it is the second target, and that's the order of visibility on something called the z-axis, which has everything to do with 3D design and programming and stuff like that. Don't worry about all that right now, but that is how layers work, and I'll explain that more. But the first thing we want to do is we're going to add a background, and to do that, first let's rename. You want to name everything you're working with. Right click and rename this to background. That is your one layer. And add another layer on top of it. So the background is going to be in the back, so it's going to be at the bottom of the list. This layer is going to be game. And I did that wrong. Add layer at top, game. And we're going to add one more, and it's going to be called UI, as in user interface. UI, then game, then background. Keep that in mind, that's how your layers work. To make our background, this is what I do. Remember how I talked about assets in the first video? It is ideal if you make your own assets, or you get a licensed asset that you don't have to attribute anyone to. It's just a lot less work. So we're going to make grass background, but I've used my own asset to do that, and I'll explain. Go ahead and minimize construct. In the download links, I'm going to put a link where you can download this asset that I took. I'm going to click on my folders here. These are my images I'm going to be using. I took a picture of my carpet. That's what it looks like. Now we're going to turn that into a 64 by 64 pixel image and use it to tile the background. So what we're going to do is we're going to right click and edit with GIMP. The last tutorial we set up GIMP, and this is why you should have some knowledge of image editing before you even start a game, because you're going to need assets and you're going to need to know how to alter them and or create them. First thing you want to know is that, okay, this image is already 1280 by 720. You could put that as the background. It's going to look weird. So we're not going to do that. The first thing we're going to do is actually colorize this background to make it look green. So layers also goes to GIMP. Any imaging editing software works with layers, video editing too, and other things. So there's only one layer here. That's the actual picture in GIMP. And we're going to go to filters. We're going to go to colors and colorize. And we're going to change the hue and saturation to get to a green. So bring back the hue a little bit. We're going to get a green. That's a little more of a grassy green. We're going to bring up the saturation. We're going to leave the saturation about like that. Lightness. Let's keep it right around there. So if you want to use that, you can use whatever you want. It doesn't really matter. 81, 46, and -5 will be this one. So we're going to click OK. Now that is set. Now the next thing you want to do, and this is just something I do, and you don't have to do this, but I like making my own assets so I don't have to worry about licensing stuff. If I can, but I'm not even an artist, so it's kind of hard for me. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to make a 64 by 64 crop. Like this. And if you hold down the crop, you can notice at the bottom of the window it says rectangle, and then it has dimensions 97 by 82. You want to get those dimensions to 64 by 64. So 64 height and 64 width. There you go. And the crop tool is this tool right here. Once you have that set 64 by 64, go ahead and hit enter, and that'll crop that. And now we have a piece of grass. We have a tile of grass we're going to use. So let's go ahead and you don't have to save it. You can if you want to. Instead, we're just going to export it to save some time, and I'm just going to keep it in my same folder. Homemade. You can put it in any folder for now. We're actually going to make a folder list. So just put it in any folder for now, just so you remember where it's at, and name it grassbg.jpg. Actually, let's make it a PNG. grassbg.png. And hit export. Just leave it as default. Hit export. There you go. You can leave that up because you've already exported the image, so the image is not being used. GIMP is using an instance of the image. So go ahead and open back up construct or maximize it. And what we're going to do is make sure the background is selected. We're going to add a background. How do we do that? We right click in the project, insert new object, and then click tiled background. Left click. Actually, I'm going to hit X. I'm going to show you something. I'm going to delete that. Don't worry about deleting that. Insert new object. I'm going to do that again. Tiled background. If you notice the yellow tooltip, that indicates what layer you're putting an object on. So make sure you have the appropriate layer selected. If not, you can always change it in the properties section once you make the object. So go ahead and left click, and this is going to bring up the edit image window. You're going to open a file because you already made it, and go to, where did I put that? It's in desktop, and I believe it's homemade. Yeah, homemade. I have some stuff in here. Here's the one I made earlier. I actually like that better, but for argument's sake, let's go ahead and do this one. Double click, and this isn't going to look great. It's just going to look, it's just something. And that should say 64 by 64. Good. Hit X, and that'll insert it into your picture. Now what we want to do is we want to stretch it to about roughly the size of your window. Some people say make it bigger, but since we've made this object the perfect size, let's go ahead and just size it to 1280 by 720 to fit our window, and position 0, 0 so you know that it is completely aligned. Next thing we're going to do is, okay, you know how if you were to add another object and you accidentally clicked, you're going to move your layer. So, well, not your layer, your object. So in order to prevent that from happening, what we're going to do is lock the background. Okay? Cool. Alright, next thing we're going to do is we're going to add a sprite, which is a character. Now, your sprite is not going to go in your background unless it's a background sprite. This isn't. This is going to be a playable character, your main character. So we're going to click Game, and we're going to open up your internet browser, and open a new tab, and click on Sith Gestures, which we did in the last video, and click on, let's go ahead and click on the baby, or the Egyptian guy. It looks like a baby, that's why I use it. Left click on him, right click that, save image as, and this is where we're going to make our sprites folder. So let's go ahead and go to desktop, new folder, and this is going to be our entire project folder, and we're going to name it Sugar Hill Island Trip. Click outside of there, double click it so you open it, and then make another folder inside that folder called Images. Double click Images and move, you can name it whatever you want. I'm just going to name it Baby underline full, because there are 12 stances. Baby 12 stances, and click Save, and now that is in your image folder. Now while we're at it, let's go ahead and move the other image over. So let's minimize, let's minimize everything, go to the folder that has the grass in it as well. You might as well just, you can probably just cut it. I'm going to copy it so I can reuse it. Control C or Control X and go to desktop, Sugar Hill Island Trip, Images, Control V, and that'll create it in your Images folder. Now let's go back to Sugar Hill Island Trip. Just click up here because we're going to put it on our favorites bar. Actually, let's click on desktop first. Here's our Sugar Hill Island Trip project folder. Let's move it to our favorites, and now we can access it easily. We can also use images if you want. I don't normally do that, but you can. But I already have one on there, so I'm not going to do that. Click X. Alright, now we're more organized, so let's open back up Construct. And we're going to open, I just got a text message. That is my Back to the Future ringtone, notification tone rather. I like it. One thing I see that I don't like is this needs to be renamed. Let's rename this background to BG and then grass tile 64. I like being specific. There we go. Alright, let's go ahead and add the character. Make sure we add him to the game layer. So click game, right click again, insert new object. Remember the background's locked so we can't move it. If you need to work in the background layer again, a lot of times you are going to have to uncheck the lockbox. For argument's sake, let's go ahead and insert a new object into the game layer. We're going to do a sprite, left click, and we're going to get the baby picture. Now there are multiple ways to do this. I'm going to show you a simple way. There it is. We're not actually using this file, this object itself. So don't worry about renaming it because we're not going to be using it in the game. I'm going to show you a different way how to use it. So what we're going to do is we're going to start making our own sprites. First thing we're going to do is, since this is a top-down 2D RPG, we're going to double click and open the image in the image editor. Next we're going to zoom in. So click in the image and hold down your control button and your control key and zoom in with your mouse so it's workable, because you're going to be selecting stuff. I'm going to zoom in like that. You're going to grab your selection tool and we're going to get this image. So just make sure you select everything. Make sure you capture the entire thing and nobody else. Going to hit the copy. I'm going to exit out of here. Then we're going to insert another object, sprite, left click, then we're going to paste. Now we're going to deselect that by clicking this tool again, then we're going to crop it. The reason we want to crop it is we want to get this thing cut down as much as possible, because we're going to be working with something called collisions, and collisions work with the boundaries of your image. So you want to make sure all your images are cropped as close as they can. I just use the auto crop feature. It's just easier that way. It doesn't crop it down perfectly, but it's really close. So let's go ahead and click X, and wham, we've just inserted our character. And we can move him wherever we want. We're going to move him down here to start. That's our little baby. And we're going to rename him to rename CHR. That's our character. And main baby. There's that. Okay guys, that's it for adding sprites for this tutorial. Next tutorial we're going to be working with behaviors and platforms and moving our character around. So stay tuned for lesson 3. Like us on Facebook and follow us on YouTube, Sugar Hill Island Tutorials. Thank you.